Hi, this is JR. This is returning to the alertness of a child. Not just any child, but maybe your own self when you were a child. Like, what kind of alertness would you have had? And then, of course, as adults, to return to the alertness of a child, we don't have to leave behind any of the other things we've learned, our knowledge, our competencies. We just have the alertness of a child along with all of those things. So this might be pretty short, but I'm going to present this as a reading here of a few paragraphs. One brief introductory comment. If we've heard about beginner's mind from within the Zen tradition or the Jnana yoga or Chan yoga or Zen Buddhist yoga tradition, alertness and beginner's mind go together. I don't think I make any reference. Okay, I do make another reference to the Christian scriptural tradition here, so I'll save my reference until it happens in the paragraph away from now. However, I want to note how simple it is to return to the alertness of a child. I'm going to read something, but it doesn't take reading it, doesn't take listening to it. Once you get it, or once you're clear what I'm referring to, because it's not something you don't already have available, once you're clear what I'm referring to, then it's an instantly available alertness. It's actually not a different alertness than what you already have, but the alertness of a child. I'll say a little bit more about what I mean by that. Any speculations and initiatives on your part as to what I might mean? Okay, so I'll just go ahead and read. Whether the world happens to be with you or whether the world happens to be against you may be of little importance. So that's not something that a child is really that interested in. Is the world with me in this, my alertness or whatever, or is the world against me in a particular alertness, awareness, attention, focus, interest? Kids don't care if the world's with them or against them in an interest, at least initially. So if you are against the world or for the world or any particular detail of the world, you're against something or you're for something, again, that may be of no great importance. That's not needed for alertness. So obviously we're talking about some things that are not alertness, that can detract or distract from alertness or contrast with alertness. However, when the mind is like that of a small child, what would that be like? What would a small child's mind be like? Clear, alert, open. They obviously don't have lots of preconceptions because they're too young. Curious is typical of a small child, right? And relaxed. And relaxed doesn't mean not excited about something. They certainly can get really excited about something. But their capacity to shift from being excited about one thing to being excited about another, there's that capacity. There's also the capacity to stay really excited about one thing for quite a while. Nagging about that particular toy or whatever that they really would like to have. We might even say that's getting beyond the alertness of the small child. But a relaxed mind is the natural state. Tension, worry about the future, worry about what other people think of me right now. 2-year-olds don't have stage fright, as far as I know. 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, they might have stage fright, but 2-year-olds, they don't have stage fright. They have alertness, a clear perception of whatever's in their midst. They see things right there. They're not, necessarily fixated on labeling things or is that, a good thing or a bad thing. As time goes on, they will practice the words that they know with their limited vocabulary. So they'll be very excited to identify a dog or a cat or a red thing or a brown thing when they learn a new word, but their general curiosity and openness is pretty much consistent. So when the mind is like that of a child, clear, alert, open, curious, relaxed, receptive to new information, not in a state of particular expectation, but just open, alert, some may call that the narrow gate to the kingdom of heaven. That's the Christian reference there. Some rather famous people seem to have considered that idea of the mind of a small child to be a very important detail. Be ye like a small child again, and ye shall inherit the kingdom of heaven, or something like that. I don't remember what verses I'm approximating there, but there are a few New Testament verses like those. In contrast, when the mind is preoccupied, really busy, making a lot of judgments, when the mind is preoccupied with idealism about how people should be, about how I should be, and how the world should not be, and all sorts of idealisms and preoccupations, that is a busy mind, a full mind, even overflowing. Have you heard the story about the cup and the cup of tea, and the Zen master is pouring some more tea into the cup of one of his very sincere students who knows all the answers already because they read a book and they went to 2 retreats already, so they've got Zen mastered. And the master pours the tea into the cup and keeps pouring the tea into the cup. And what eventually happens? The tea overflows because there's so much tea in the cup that the cup can't contain anymore. That was just our windows open and a neighborhood child was, we don't know what, yelling. So when it's like when your arms are full, I mean, it's the same idea. You can't carry anything new. So when your mind is preoccupied, it's actually, you could say, like, it's distracted. Preoccupied, distracted. Those go together, right? So when someone's preoccupied with anything, then that's a busy mind. It's a contrast to wide open alertness. When someone's mind or thoughts are preoccupied with idealism, that's still a distraction. Idealism, how the world should be, how people should not be, and so on. Hopefully we're pretty clear on what idealism means. Idealism is a particular way of relating to ideals. The world should be this particular ideal way. People should be a particular ideal way. Not to say that, so that's idealism. In contrast, we could just say, ideal for me would be that such and such, airplane ticket be purchased by the Tuesday of next week. That could be ideal. But that doesn't imply idealism. It's just an ideal. It's a point of reference. It's a preference. It's a optimal speculation about an optimal outcome. It's an ideal. No big deal. Idealism, though, that can be troublesome. Chronic tension can eventually, like chronic physical tension, can eventually be maintained through chronic distress, or can go with chronic distress. So physical tension, when held out of concern over ideas, as in agonizing over ideals, anxiety about ideals, fear about meeting ideals, meeting expectations, and so on. A mind that's filled with the agony of agonizing, that's not just an open, alert mind. a child. Chronic tension, lasting distress about, you know, philosophical issues or moral issues and so on. Small children don't have that. They breathe differently than many adults. They sleep more soundly than many adults. They can go to sleep quickly, whereas some adults have trouble going to sleep. There are a lot of tensions in a tangle of thought for so many adults. Now, when I say that a child can go to sleep, I'm not suggesting that you go to sleep right now. Rebellion. What's a small child's orientation on rebellion? You can, that's fine. Go ahead. What is a small child's orientation on rebellion? It's not really that they're interested in rebellion in particular. They're just interested in whatever they're interested in. They don't think about, oh, am I a rebel? Or, I don't know. They're very simple and they're, you know, they have a perception, they take action. We can have a perception, then have a period of, you could say, consideration, contemplation, digestion. So I get some input, I digest it, I take a little time to digest it, and then I take action. That might be more typical of an adult, certainly, than a child. But agonizing and a lot of the things that are common for adults to do are optional. And in many cases may really be unfavorable. It's an interesting development that people would lose the alertness of a child, and another time I may talk more about that. I don't plan to here. Rebellion may be overrated. However, conformity, just for the sake of conformity, also may be overrated. Child isn't trying to conform, not trying to rebel at a certain young age. A child's just doing what they're doing. They're hungry, so they eat. They're tired, so they sleep. Like that. Are they, you know, fitting into a category or making sure they don't fit into a particular category that's evil or bad, or, you know, not going to get gifts from Santa Claus? At some point, children become, you know, conditioned and may develop preoccupations. But at a very early age, that really early young state is just alert, just present, you might say. So I make some reference here to self-respect and self-discipline. Is there anything that can substitute for self-respect? So if I lack self-respect, is there anything that can make up for that besides self-respect? I'm asserting that there is actually no substitute for self-respect. There's coping mechanisms people may attempt if there's an absence of self-respect, so to speak. But there's no real substitute for self-respect. Same for self-discipline. If there's a lack of self-discipline, there's really no substitute for that other than self-discipline. There are things that, you know, can be mitigating factors, like external discipline can help somebody prosper even when they lack self-discipline, but that's not a substitute for self-discipline. That's just, you know, another circumstance that can be favorable. But self-discipline itself has no substitute. It is valuable for itself. So what a child might not have is a well-developed self-discipline, a well-developed self-respect based on encountering challenges, resolving those challenges, and being perceptive. So that's humility without necessarily arrogance or shame. Just kind of a simple self-respect. Now, can you get self-respect from others? like from a social ritual, from a 4-year degree program, from a dietary change. You can't get self-respect from others. It arises by itself through certain experiences. How about self-discipline? Can you get that from other people? Can you get it from a ritual? Can you get it from a 6-year college degree program? Well, no, you don't get self-discipline from those things, but you can be exposed to discipline. Other people can show you their self-discipline. They can say, here's a program in which for you to succeed, self-discipline will be helpful. So they can give you a circumstance that encourages self-discipline, but you can't get it from a social ritual. You can't get it from an institution. You can't buy it in a pill. You can't buy self-respect in a pill. Take 2 of these a day, and then you're going to have self-respect, or then you're going to have self-discipline. Well, it's not quite that simple. There certainly could be pills that help you, with your cognitive functioning and your neurochemistry and so on. But in and of themselves, self-respect and self-discipline are fruits that naturally arise from grace, we might say. You don't get it from other people. Other people saying that you have it doesn't really change whether you have it or not. If self-respect relies on other people to validate it or to generate it, that's not self-respect then. Self-respect refers to an internal respect. So we can have an open, calm, clear alertness and a adult's developed sense of self-respect, in contrast to just an alert child who's also pretty naive. Pretty unsophisticated. Now, as far as getting back to a state of open alertness, getting back to a pure mind of a pure child, there's only one way to do that. And I call that process repenting. And that's just the phrase that I use for it, the label that I use. Different people may use that same word in a different way. Repenting, I don't mean a social ritual. I mean, a social ritual is not exclusive. Like, repenting can be part of a social ritual, but social rituals don't generate repentance. Repenting can include acknowledging a past experience of fright or worry or shame, and then any variety of repressions. So I can say, I acknowledge that I was afraid, in general, in particular, whatever the details would be. And that would be if I'm repenting and actually speaking to someone else. But really it's an internal recognition of my ongoing past experiences. My past experiences that may be ongoing, or that are recurring, or have been recurring, so they might happen again. Fright, I can be frightened. Worry, I can worry. Shame, I can experience shame. It's happened, it could happen again. It could be happening at any particular point. Agonizing, right? Experiencing a busy mind. Repenting is just acknowledging those things. So to acknowledge them sets up a new potential until certain patterns until certain things are conscious, until we're observing those things. You don't have to label them, but until we're aware of certain things, then we have once we're aware of certain things, then we have the capacity to explore, make changes, consider those things. But until we're aware of them, there's no capacity for us to do anything. We have no power without awareness, or we could say knowledge. You've probably heard the phrase, knowledge is power, or with knowledge comes power. So repenting is a way to set aside preoccupations. How? By acknowledging them. I've had some preoccupation. I was frightened, I was worried, I was agonizing, I was ashamed, or I was concerned about future shame. So we can acknowledge a preoccupation, and that's it. There's nothing that needs to be done further. I just acknowledge it. Okay, yep, I've been preoccupied with that. And immediately, alertness is available. The narrow gate, not fixated off to the left or the right or above or below or whatever, not looking, just at my footsteps, but I can look ahead, I can look down. There's a narrow range of focus that fits with access to what in the Christian tradition can be referred to as the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, the heavenly state. The state of grace. Obviously in other traditions they will use other phrases or even other translations within European Christianity. There's been a lot of different languages used. Of course there's ancient Hebrew and other languages, so they have all their different words, but repenting is, I don't know what language the word pent comes from, but repent, it might be related to rethink. I'm not certain, actually. It doesn't really matter. So from a state of fear, of preoccupation, I am aware of a contrasting state of just open alertness, relaxed alertness, the absence of preoccupation. So there's a preoccupied state, and then a state without preoccupation. And one of the fastest ways to go from a preoccupied state to a state that's not preoccupied might be to just acknowledge, internally, externally, verbally, non-verbally, to just acknowledge the history of some preoccupation, the absence of an open alertness. There's nothing unusual about occasional preoccupations. So I have a preoccupation for a while, and then I may think, wow, I've really been preoccupied with that, at least for 20 minutes or a weekend or whatever period of time. I may want to consistently move away from a particular preoccupation or any preoccupation and create a ritual or a sanctuary for a relaxation or a relaxed mental state, a stress-free mode. So we can say, here's stressed, here's preoccupied. Not just preoccupied in general, but stressed, even distressed. And contrast to that, simple alertness. So I'm going to give two similar versions of a phrase from the Christian New Testament, Titus 1:15. To the pure, all things are pure. To the one who's already disturbed, the number of potential triggers for venting the pre-existing frustration or disturbance is infinite. That would spark a display of contempt, a display or revealing of distress, hysteria, and so on. And a similar way to say the same idea is this. For those with perception as it should be, everything is as it should be. Clear, alert mind, I notice something, I identify it. Okay, that's what that is. Here's some possible responses. That's it. For those with perception as it should be, everything is as it should be. Everything that happens is as it should be. There is a time for everything under heaven. There's a season for everything under heaven, a purpose for every quality. A time for love and for hate, a time for peace and for war. That's from the ancient Hebrew scriptures of Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I don't know the exact verse. So with this alert, open mind of a child, with perception as it should be, everything is as it should be. I'm not preoccupied with resisting any particular thing as what should not be. I don't have a preoccupation with defending or clinging to some particular idealism. For those with perception as it should be, everything is as it should be. For those with perception as it should not be, everything or anything is potentially what it should not be. So someone who is easily disturbed will find lots of things that shouldn't be how they are, according to them. But that young child that's just alert, do they find a lot of things that shouldn't be how they are, according to them? They don't have any comment about how things should already be, or how things should never be, or how things should always be. At a young enough age, that's not their filter, that's not their persona, that's not their practice, that's not their behavior in language. They don't go around labeling things as what should not be and saying, oh, here's things that should be like they are, and here's things that should not be like they are. That's not the practice of that really young, open, alert, humble, simple mind, that pure mind, that beginner's mind. Somebody with a cup full of tea, they go around and they don't have much room to add anything to their cup because they already know how the world should be. Who cares about how the world is? Because they know how the world should be. And that is a state of frightened arrogance. Very common. I might have even had that kind of experience at some time. And there is a purpose for such an experience. There's a time and a season for such an experience. And after that frightened arrogance and frustration of, finding out the idealisms that are the best one and defending reality from the parts of reality that should not be how they are. After all that exhausting, frustrating process, I might repent. I might acknowledge the past idealisms. I might acknowledge the chronic tensions and the distress and the agonizing that I have been doing. And just see, here's some people, and here's how they're behaving. And here's some groups of people, and here's how they're behaving. And here's some other things, and here's how those things are going. And here's the reality of things. And everything should be how it is. Including that some people, at some stage in their life, will go around identifying a variety of things that should not be how they are, according to those people. I will say in a concluding note here that I recently did a Facebook status that I'm reminded of. I'm going to find it and read it real quick. If I can, I'll be able to find it pretty quickly. It's related to this idea of idealism and fixating on particular patterns as how they should not be. Patience is also a kind of a fruit of a certain kind of way of being. And by their fruit, one can notice the way of being that a person is in. By their fruit, such as patience or frustration or clarity or distress. So in my Facebook status, I wrote Jack, and I just made up this name, Jack. Jack wants to be some particular thing. Or Jack secretly wants to be some particular thing. But Jack is afraid to say so. He's afraid to say that he's interested in a particular thing. He's afraid to explore it as well. Or he might also be afraid of exploring it. Not just afraid to admit it, but afraid to explore it. And in a circumstance like that, where Jack secretly has some interest, Jack may frequently and publicly say that people should not be that way that Jack's interested in, or should not explore that subject that Jack's actually kind of interested in. And why would Jack say that? Why would he say people should not be that particular way, but they should be more like me, right? Right? Why would Jack have that kind of a insecurity or be testing out those ideas and expressing them to other people? Well, he's actually inviting social feedback about a particular subject, a particular possibility. Perhaps he's testing the receptivity of people around him. He's inviting disapproval, in fact. He's saying people should not be a certain way. So he's inviting people to agree with him in his own disapproval of that quality or that pattern of behavior and so on. However, no matter how much someone focuses on being against something, like I could say, I'm against orange bandanas. I'm really against orange bandanas. I'm really against orange bandanas. No matter how much someone focuses on being against something, they're still focusing on the thing that they claim to be against. In contrast, that simple, alert mind of a child, not against anything. We could say inclusive. They are, open-minded. They're not fixated on excluding a particular thing or fitting in with a particular group or a particular historical trend. They're not trying to be a postmodernist. They're not trying not to be a postmodernist. They're just operating out of alertness, interest, a natural, graceful flow. Returning to the alertness of a child. I will give you another secret to returning to the alertness of a child. It is to occasionally interact with small children. It works. Maybe even frequently interact with them. It doesn't take much to return to the alertness of a small child. In a way, it takes a lot to not operate with the alertness of a small child. That's what takes a lot.